Charmaine has joined. Hetty Lowe. Hi Hetty, Charmaine. Sue Cooper. Amy is joined. Emily Gray says, hello everyone. Hope you've got your wine ready, Emily. Who else do we have on here? Colin, Fred, welcome everyone. Tell us where you're from, please. It's always nice to know who we're talking to from what outskirts across the globe. Leon Lowe has joined. Rosemary has joined. Nora, welcome everyone. Just giving half a minute so everybody gets to settle in front of Zoom or Facebook, whatever it is that you're using. Hi from Santon. Great stuff. Van der Bijl Park. Yep, Hetty, I think we've had you on the previous ones as well, if I'm not mistaken. Van der Bijl Park rings a bell. It's so interesting to see where people are joining from. As I've mentioned before, Hungary and Spain and Minnesota and all over. Neisner, good stuff. Okay, so let's get going. For those, most of you seem like familiar names, but for those that are new, that are joining us, you know how it works. There's a chat section that you can talk about the wines and to each other. If there's any questions, try and put it into the Q&A section. It just helps myself to pick it up a little bit easier. So there, as I just mentioned, there's Sharon from Portugal just signed in. Special welcome to you. For those on Facebook joining us, you can also put your comments or any questions you've got on Facebook. We'll pick up on it and it will pop up on my side as well. So those on Facebook that are not on Zoom, more than welcome to let us know what you think, any questions. It'll come through to me and we'll deal with as much as possible of those questions. So last week we were joined by Barry when we did sparkling wine. What an amazing pairing that was. I went to try, and that's one of the perks of doing this, is getting to try the pairings afterwards. And it was, Annie, I think one of the best pairings yet was cheesecake with the sparkling wine. It is amazing. I'm not big on desserts, but that was one that definitely should go onto the menu when you reopen Moody Lagoon again. So, but tonight you've got as I said right in the beginning when I introduced you, Annie doesn't believe in doing ordinaries. There's always a bit of a surprise, and I think this is definitely one of them. Annie, tell us what you've got in store for us this week. I'm really looking forward to this because it's like unknown territory for me, so I'm all ears.
So hi everyone. So today, well, I didn't really have much of a choice when it came to what dish we're going to make today. Seeing as it's winter, we're featuring our collage, and it is, of course, Waterblommetjie season. So naturally, I had to do a lemon Waterblommetjie Bredie. So for those who don't know, Bredie just kind of roughly translates to stew in Afrikaans, and Waterblommetjie is just a small water flower. And then, so it kind of grows during July and August, and it normally grows in dams and marshes along the Western Cape. Flavor-wise, it kind of tastes like a green bean with like a little hint of lemon. And texture-wise, it kind of resembles artichoke leaves. So yeah, of course, we're working on that today. And then, so we're making a bredie, as I mentioned.
Doesn't look like your usual kitchen though, Annie.
And changed on occasion a little bit. Actually, as you noticed, we kind of came out of the kitchen and been doing a bit of a camping vibe in the salad. So we have our little handy dandy camping gas bowl over here. Our bush baby is going. So in here we just have our little lamb knuckles that we've been browning. We've used our baby potatoes in here that we added about 15 minutes ago. We have our roasted tomatoes, our onions and our garlic, our stock, and of course our wine, which is Benguela Cove, of course. And that's just been going for about an hour, just simmering, which is nice and soft. And for now, we're just going to be adding our Waterblommetjies. Like, I've kind of read up and I've listened to quite a lot of people talk about how they make their Waterblommetjie Bredie, and everybody kind of thinks theirs is the best. But the one common thing that they have, and what everybody mentioned, is not to mess around with it too much. Just use normal, simple flavors. Keep it natural. Just let everything just shine through, which kind of resembles the wine as well. It's elegant, it's simple, but not over the top at all. Thank you. So we're going to add on Waterblommetjies for now. So we're going to add that, and it's going to simmer for about another 20 minutes. So the bigger ones I like to cut up just into a little bit of smaller pieces, just so it absorbs all those flavors that is in the pot that we've been trying to accumulate and kind of slowly develop over the hour. So the big ones, like I said, we're going to cut those in half, maybe a couple of quarters.
Is it something you have to clean before you use it, or do you just take it as is, or?
I normally give them a quick rinse and then just kind of see how they are. If they're nice and solid, then it's not really too necessary. You don't have to do too much hassles with it. A lot of people kind of blanch them beforehand, but since I like to cook them in the pot, so it cooks in that steam and in those flavors, it just picks up all those nice. Yeah, so we have cumin, we have coriander, everything in there, and that just kind of hopefully that will absorb all those flavors. So while I'm going to add that, let's go back to you and learn about a little bit more about blending.
All right. Okay, so looking forward to that. It looks like there's quite a few ingredients and stuff, and it looks like quite a busy table, almost like a blending table there. But for those that don't know, the recipe is available on our social media platform, so you can get it there. And it sounds like Waterblommetjies, not sure what the English is for that, but maybe Annie can help us a little bit later, is in season. So yeah, there it goes into the pot. And while that is going, why do we not pour ourselves? You probably did so already, but if you haven't, pour ourselves some of the wine we'll be looking at tonight. So this time around, we're doing a red blend, and it's the Benguela Cove Estate Collage, and it's the 2018 vintage that we've got here. So I just thought just to help explain blends and what blends are about, because it's probably one of the most misunderstood categories in wine, in that people think that blends are all the leftovers in the cellar that we just put together and just throw all into one tank, and there you've got the blend. So it's just getting rid of all the leftovers, when in actual fact it's a bit of the opposite, in that there's a lot of skill and a lot of work, and almost, there's a saying, the art of blending, and it's kind of true. There's a lot of work that goes into creating blends. You know, it's definitely not a matter of waking up one morning and just throwing all the leftovers and boom, there you've got a blend. I almost want to take a guess by saying that of 90% of wineries, probably their flagship wine, their top wine would be blends. So again, just another proof of that blends are quite a serious expression of wine, or a serious category. It's normally more at the high end than at the lower end of winemaking. So the whole idea of blending and using different grape varietals together is that that they should complement each other or work together. So it's not, as I said, just taking a few different wines that you've got in the cellar and putting them together. They should actually go together and fit together, like we see on the left hand side. Because if you don't really think and taste and analyze what you've done and how they all differently interact, you get a wine or an end product which isn't greater than the components on their own. And a blend can easily be full of mistakes or holes or edges, and it's not a homogeneous, seamless wine. So the idea of blending is to improve on the wines that you use. So that's why I said there's a bit of skill and experience needed when you go into blending. So the idea is to use all these components to create a bigger picture or something, a wine that or a style that you've got in mind. And there's a reason why I selected this photo, because you'll see there's a couple of people joining the dots or putting the pieces together to create the bigger picture. And that goes the same with this wine that we're tasting tonight, the Collage. It's not just me doing everything from the vineyards to the selection of the fruits, the barrels, the components. It's actually a team effort, and quite a big team that we've got here. Winemaking is probably the biggest team sport there is. So it starts in the vineyard. It started with in this wine. It already started end of 2016, where we've evaluated the vineyards. How are we going to go about it? What is it that we want to achieve in 2018? How are we going to prune our vines? How are we going to go about it in the growing season? How much do we want to crop it? How much sunlight do we want to get into the vines? When it comes into the cellar, we've got a good idea what we want to do with every vineyard, how we want to age it, how we want to make those wines. So it's between the vineyard team, our viticulturist Yaku, myself, Michelle in the winery. We've all got a common goal that we're working to, and we all have input in building the bigger picture. I believe in more people being involved, because we don't all taste and smell the same wines. We've got different ideas, and by collaborating and getting everyone's ideas into the pot, the end result is often better than just one person running along their lines. So there's a lot of talking and debating and up and forward and discussing these wines before we get to what we've got in the glass. So blending, in essence, is what it's about is that the whole should be greater than the sum of its parts. So what you end up as a blend should be a better product than the individual components that you use to make up the blend. That's the whole idea. If you've not achieved that, a better end result, then you've missed the plot somewhere along the lines. So it's a bit like looking at it from like a musical instrument point of view. So I'm not saying blends are better than single varietal wines. I mean, there's nothing better than someone that's a master at the musical instrument they're playing, be it the guitar or a drum or the violin, whatever it is they're doing as a solo. It's fantastic. And the same goes for Cabernet. You have to appreciate a single varietal Cabernet or Syrah or Chardonnay. They're great wines. So I'm not saying blends are always better, but when you use them all together, you just create this bigger sound, this symphony of and all these layers and complexity that you get into one bottle by blending all these wines together. So when it comes to blending, different winemakers have different views and different beliefs on what they do. So some winemakers or wineries would use one grape, let's say Cabernet Sauvignon, as the champion grape, and they'll just to improve the Cabernet a little bit, add a bit of Merlot or Malbec or Syrah or something to it, but it's still about the Cabernet being the champion. That's not our philosophy or what we believe in doing, because then it's not really blending. It's just blending to improve what is the champion, be it Syrah or whatever it is. For me, blends there shouldn't be a champion or a standout grape. Everything should be in harmony and in balance with each other. So you shouldn't pick this up and say, oh yeah, no, it's Syrah dominant or Merlot dominant. Then you're kind of missing the point for me. So with us, there's no champion. Sorry, Andre, but you'll have to just leave the stage here for a bit with this wine. It's about the entire band, not about one guy. So everybody's input, all the grape components, input is as important. Even though, and you'll see it on the back label, even though they are in different percentages, it's just everything, every grape varietal plays a big role. You'll see Cabernet Franc is only 10%, but we only needed 10% of the Cabernet Franc to come to the fourth and contribute something to the blend. where something like Petit Verdot was 25%. So we needed more of the Petit and what that offered to come to the party and to the blend. Okay, so ultimately what it's about, you've got the winemaker on the bottom right of the screen. And why we are blending is, yes, to create something better, but also to strike a balance in the wine. You know, you want a balance between the acidity, between sugar, is actually more referring to the fruity flavors, the tannin and the alcohol. All of that should be in perfect balance. And for blends, there's no excuse not to achieve balance, because you can use all these components and variables to work with to achieve this. This is almost like a chair. If you remove one of the legs, the whole thing falls to the floor. So I firmly believe in balance in wines, and hopefully you get to see the balance in this wine tonight. So just briefly on blends, there's many versions of blends across the world. The one that we're tasting tonight is what we call a Bordeaux style blend. So you'll know Bordeaux is a region in France. So these grapes obviously aren't from the Bordeaux region in France. They planted here on the property, but they originate. They came from the Bordeaux region in France. Today they're planted all over the world, but we still refer to it as a Bordeaux style, just in reference of where it originated from. Talking of France, obviously they've got various blends. So Bordeaux blends quite famous. There is Rhone style blends, so those are blends of Syrah, Mourvedre, Carignan. Then you've got even champagnes are blends of Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, Chardonnay. Then if you go to Spain, they've got the Riojas, those are blends. Italy, the Chiantis, the Super Tuscans, those are blends. Most countries are making blends. Some are more known for single varietals. If you take New Zealand, more Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir. Some countries like France, Italy, Spain, to a certain extent ourselves, are more known for blends. So those names that I've mentioned, Rioja, Chianti, those aren't names of grapes. Those are the names of the regions, and those are all blended wines. So blended wines is an age-old thing that's been around for many years. Question I often get is, what blends do South Africa do well? And I think I've spoke about this in the first webinar, is that South Africa is not known for one specific style or one blend, for the simple reason, and if you're looking at all these grape growing regions just in the Western Cape, this is, as most of you know, a very small section of the Western Cape, and it's just so diverse. If you drive from Durbanville to Stellenbosch to Elgin to the Walker Bay to Elam, which is probably like 250 kilometers, if it's that much, you've crossed 5 entirely different grape growing regions, which is suited for completely different grape varietals. So there's not one style of one wine or blend that works across all these grape growing regions. So South Africa, quite diverse, like all the different single varietal wines we make. And the same goes for blends. So we do some great Bordeaux blends, more up into Paarl, Swartland, even a little bit down here in Elam. Great for some Rhone style blends. Then we do Cape blends. So Cape blend is you can use anything in there as long as 30% of that blend consists of pinotage. So therefore Cape blend. And then there's some, in a smaller percentage, some version of Italian style blends as well. So usually when I open red wines, one of the fun things for me is always looking at the vintage. So this wine is obviously still a baby. We've just released it. So this is a 2018. But when you keep it, you know, if you open older wines, what I always enjoy doing is, and let's use 2018, is, you know, where were you in 2018 round about this time of year? Did you get married? Did you get engaged? Was it the year your first child was born? Did you finish school? Did you retire? I don't know. Where did you go on holiday? where were you in 2018? And that's only 2 years ago. So it becomes a lot of fun when you go to your 2015 or 2010 red wine stock. And then all of a sudden you start taking out the phone and going through your photos because you've got no idea. I'm actually don't have an idea 2018 where I was. I actually think wasn't it Soccer World Cup this time. I can't even remember who won the Soccer World Cup. And if it was in 2018. But anyway, just a fun thing whenever you open an older wine is just to go back in time, and that's the beauty of wine, just to take us back and remind us what happened back then. So, as I said, we're doing the Collage blends. Obviously, they have lots of layers of flavors and aromatics, but I think I'm going to hand over to Michelle because I've been talking enough for now. Michelle, if you can hear me, don't you want to tell us about the blend, what you've done, how it works, what we should be smelling and tasting and appreciating?
Yeah, sure. It would be my privilege to introduce the collage. So as you've mentioned before, I think as everyone knows that we'd be doing the estate collage. And before we get into the wine, I think maybe let's just chat a bit about the collage and the meaning of the name and why we chose it. So, you know, we named it after that snapshot you put together of a family picture of your family holidays, whatever. So the same with this wine, as you explained now, with blend being superior to all its individual components. So each year we'd go and select the best components of that year and put that into this blend to, at the end of the day, give you kind of a snapshot into that year's vintage and what worked and what was outstanding for us to give us kind of the best product. So you mentioned, or you explained a bit about Bordeaux blends as well. This is a Bordeaux style blend, not a Bordeaux blend. It's not from Bordeaux. And it's named Bordeaux style because of the cultivars we use in it. So Bordeaux cultivars are 5 specific cultivars that grow in Bordeaux itself or originate or kind of well known from there. And those 5 cultivars are Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Malbec. If you want to chat about how much of each we have in this wine, we can do that quickly as well. So this blend consists of 38% of Cab Sav, which gives us that nice structure and the backbone of the wine. And then 25% Petit Verdot, which gives us a nice color and tannin content of the wine. And some 15% Merlot, which just brings some fresh fruits and softness and roundness to the wine as well. And then another 12% Malbec, and Malbec usually adds nice fresh red fruits, fresh red berries especially, and then the rest is Cab Franc. And Cab Franc usually gives us nice herbaceous notes, that cedary notes we'll pick up in the wine now as well. So let's get down to that quickly. If you want to smell with me, yeah, so I pick up like fresh cherries, nice cedary notes, some tobacco, like maybe like cherry tobacco. I don't know, that's kind of my go-to for this. And then also nice fresh red fruits, red berries, bit of raspberry, some nice perfumey floral notes as well. And then if you taste,
it's very, very perfumey, and I almost get a bit of like white chocolatey notes and lots of cherry. It's quite an expressive nose that it's got.
It is definitely. And what's like, it's always fun for me to taste with other people because it's strange the different references we have. Like for me, if I smell, it's like instant cherry tobacco, and that, I don't know where that kind of memory comes from, but that's the first thing I go back to. So I'm assuming the same for you. Sure, it's very expressive actually for such a young wine store. And then if we taste, so as I mentioned, 2018 is still quite young for a red wine, but this one has nice soft tannins. It's very easy to drink now, well balanced. It has a nice acidity, so it'll age well as well. So it's very drinkable now, but it will age beautifully too. So you don't have to drink it all now. Buy a box, open 1 bottle each year. Yeah, and some nice like tomato notes as well.
It's a well-known feature of Bordeaux style wines that they Oh, they are really pretty in their youth, but as Michelle mentioned, it's I think of red blends, maybe the category of blends that ages the best. So lots of fun watching this wine develop over time and opening a bottle almost every year and see once the fruit gives way how the more like cedary toffee-like notes start to come more forward in this wine. So a lot of fun. You should have at least a case to open a bottle every year that goes by just to
Yeah, no,
track its evolution in the bottle.
yes. So it's overall like this is one of my favorites as well. It's so beautiful and elegant and easy to drink, but also so like kind of not diverse, different and complex, which is like that's what you want in a wine as well.
Michelle, there's a question, and maybe you want to take it since you're going there. Do you need to decant a young wine, or this wine at least?
It's always beneficial to decant a wine, I would say. For young wines, we decant wines just to make it a bit more, to have them open up. So just decant them, aerate them a bit, give them a nice swirl, and all those flavors will kind of just start popping. For older wines, we usually decant just to have that sediment that usually forms as the wine ages, just to kind of get rid of that. And also maybe a nice tip for people at home. I know I've had this question before from some family members. If you don't have a decanter, because sometimes they are a bit expensive, you can just take the bottle open, pour it into a jug, and just pour it back into a wine. That's sufficient aeration to kind of do the same as a decanter would.
Yeah, it's funny that that question gets asked. What I do, because you don't always have the, like now it's 6:30. You don't have 2-3 hours to your disposal to open the wine and to leave it in the decanter. So I happen to have this with me, which is it's called a Venturi. So it's a shortcut decanter, if you like. So what you do is you pour your red wine through here, and it's got these openings on the side. So as it pours through, it's got a Venturi, and it sucks in air from both sides of this, and it just aerates the wine as it runs through here. So it used to be really expensive when they started with this, but nowadays you get them for much better prices, and it's like an instant decanter. It doesn't have all the romance and the charm like a big glass decanter, but it works instantly. And if you've got one of these at home, try this with the Collage. I have one glass just pouring out of the bottle and a second one out of this, and you'll immediately see the difference. And you can test it with friends and family. I've done it a couple of times. It's clear which one has gone through this. We have actually, thinking of it, we've got some of these in our shop here at Benguela. I'll just check with our team. Maybe we can put some of these on our online shop. So, but we'll keep you posted. If we will let you know, but this is really a worthwhile investment. Sorry, Michelle, I just thought it was fitting to mention. There's another question here is, does it have to have all 5 those grapes in for it to be a Bordeaux blend?
No. Okay. So I think a lot of people think that it does, but it doesn't. It can have a minimum of 2. It can have all of them. It doesn't really matter. It depends on the winemaker and the style you're going for, and at the end of the day, what makes the best wine. But no, short answer, you don't need all 5.
Yeah. So we've got them listed on the back, the 5 we use. You can also see all sorts of other information on there, like the actual day or dates that the grapes were picked, how many barrels we produced, how long they were aged. And if you scan this QR code, you'll get a whole rundown of the vintage conditions. There's some recipes on there from Annie as well, which is a lot of fun. So it's just like a little crib sheet when you walk over to your friends and family and you want to impress them, like, this wine was picked on the 22nd of February. You can all check it out on the back of the bottle. So while you allowing that to get some air in and open up in the glass, Michelle, I'm just going to take us through a few more slides on blends and the winemaking of this wine. Okay, so I hope everybody gave it a good thought on where they were in 2018. Grabbed their phones and started looking through some photos. So as I've mentioned, the idea of blending is for the components to complement each other and to build something bigger and better. So this is just like a brief illustration of the different grapes. So you've got Cabernet, Merlot, and I can't see the one at the top at the moment, but this is just using 3 of them. So you'll see they have different fruit profiles, different aromatics, they have different levels of dryness, they have different levels of how full-bodied they are, tannin, acidity, alcohol levels. So the idea of blending is to take the Merlot, which might be lacking something, but what the Malbec's got, and putting them together. So the Merlot might be lacking tannin, Malbec's got a lot of tannin, but not a lot of fruit. The Merlot's got the fruit. You put them together, now you've got a wine with tannin and with fruity flavors. But now this wine with the tannin and the fruity flavors might be lacking a bit of spiciness. Cabernet's got that, so bring Cabernet to the party, but to bring the right amount so it's in balance with the fruit and tannin and spiciness all work together. Now you taste this one and you feel like it needs a little bit of structure or fleshiness to the wine. You taste all your components. Oh, hang on, this Petit Verdot has got some of the body and the richness that I'm looking for. Play with different percentages by adding that to that 10%, 15%, 60%. You start building up an idea of how much of a component you need to add to get the result you're looking for. Taste it, now I need a bit more, add 5% more, taste it again, up, that's too much, just take a step back. So now you've got almost your finished product, and this blending process takes a while. It takes up to 3, sometimes 4 weeks of just revisiting that wine, revisiting it. I need a little bit more of that. That component has got a little bit of what I need in here, and you just keep on building this wine to become bigger and better. Not necessarily bigger, but more layered and with more complexity. So I've touched on this before. We're quite fortunate at Benguela, given all the components we have in the cellar because of the property. And for those that are watching the first time, this is Benguela Cove Estate. This is the vineyard. So you've got Cape Town there at the back, about an hour and a half's drive. You past Elgin. This is the road heading into Hermanus. And on the left, you've got down to the left, you've got Agulhas, the Elam side of it. So this is our property. Even though it looks flat from the top, it's quite, it's almost like bell-shaped, the whole property. You've got very steep northern slopes this side, a few southern slopes this side, western and eastern slopes. So why I mentioned slopes is that it's actually got a big influence on the wine that you get in the glass. So if you take Cabernet Sauvignon, you plant it on the southern slopes, on the northern, the western and eastern slope, you've got 4 completely different wines. So what they did back then when they planted these vineyards, because the first vines were planted on Benguela Cove 18 years ago, no one ever dared having a vineyard so close to the ocean because there are factors like wind or salt burn or seabird damage eating the grape berries. All of those were real threats. So no one was brave enough to do it and had any experience of what works on this site. So they took a bit of a shotgun approach and planted all the grape varietals on all 4 different slopes. But to add to that, and Benguela is a bit of a freak of nature, the 60-hectare site, in that it's got 5 different soil types on this small piece of land, which is completely uncommon to have. Normally a wine farm will have 1 or 2 slopes and 1 or 2 soil types. Here we've got all 4 slopes, 5 different soil types, and they went out and planted all the grape varietals across not only the 4 slopes, but also across all 5 different soil types. So like with the slopes, when you take that same Cabernet vine and you put it in 5 different soil types, 5 completely different wines again. So these are just some of the soil types. These are like iron-rich soils. We've got some granite soils, some chalk soils, which is very scarce to have them in the Western Cape. The same with these pink quartz stone. We've got like a quartz ridge running through one piece of the property. And just to give you an idea of some of the slopes running all the way down to the water's edge. So this specific vineyard you're looking at is a Syrah vineyard. It doesn't feature in this wine, but in another blend we do, which is actually also one looking out for if you enjoy blends, or the idea of blends have sparked you tonight. Is a Syrah vineyard that we use in a blend called the Moody Lagoon. Moody Lagoon obviously referring to the lagoon opposite me. There you see a little bit of the Moody Lagoon. So our lowest point on the farm is this vineyard, which is 2.7 meters above sea level. Just again, telling the story of how close to the ocean we are and how the ocean influences our wine style. This is the opposite side of the property, again, just the northern slope. So it runs down quite steep to the edge, and the wines, you can't believe the same grape planted on different slopes, different soils, how they are just completely different. The reason why I'm mentioning this is it just gives us so many components to work with when it comes to blending. So it's not only blending 5 grapes, we've got like 8 Cabernets, we've got 7 Merlots, we've got 10 Malbecs, we've got 9 Petit Verdot. So we've got probably like 50 or 60 wines to blend into this one glass. So often when I speak to people and then they hear that Benguela Cove, we're from the Walker Bay region, and they're like, but why are you doing Bordeaux blends? Because you guys are best making Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and Sauvignon Blancs. So yes, Walker Bay is associated with some of the country's best Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays, but it's also important to understand that Benguela Cove is an animal and a property of its own, given where we're at, given the climate that we've got on the property. It's unlike, which is just up the road from us, Elgin or Hemel and Ade, completely different from Hemel and Ade and different from Elam again. So we've got a totally different climate, and that's why we only do estate wines, because we want to capture this uniqueness of the property in the glass and to share that with you. So we only use grapes grown on the property. But as I said, people are surprised that we do, and we focus quite a bit on the Bordeaux grape varietals. So Bordeaux grape varietals, the reds are these 5 we've mentioned. And when it comes to white, it's Sauvignon and Semillon. And for me at first, it was also a bit of a surprise, because you just expect what works around us, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, to be the champions, and it wasn't really the case. And the Bordeaux varietals just came to the front, where if you look at Hemel and Ade or Elgin, for instance, it's not their focus because it's not really suited to their climate. But Benguela, as I said, totally different from those regions in that it gets much warmer on our property, but it also cools down quite a bit, being so close to the ocean, like clockwork. In the afternoon at 12, we've got the wind picking up and blowing over the property and cooling everything down. So much warmer than our neighboring regions, but then also cools down much more. So we've got this diagonal shift, which is quite big, and red grapes, especially the Bordeaux reds, love that temperature difference. It's like with any fruit, like with apples or pears, they like the temperature fluctuation. The more temperature fluctuation, the more color, the more flavor, the more intensity. Grapes obviously being a fruit as well. So if you so it's not just me talking. If you look at this, so I went and I looked at temperature graphs during the ripening season or the growing season of vines. If you look, this maroon one, this is Bordeaux in France, and you look at the graph that's the closest to Bordeaux in France and actually crosses it 2 times, it is ourselves. So of all the grape growing regions, so this is taking Napa, it's taking Australia, Robertson, Elgin, Willamette, which is in the US. We are the closest to Bordeaux. So shouldn't come as much as a surprise why these wines do so well in our conditions. So, um, and I've told this, and I speak to my winemaker friends quite often down in Stellenbosch, where these wines do equally well, and they claim to be the best at Cabernet and Bordeaux blends, and they tell me to leave it to them that really are good at it, and they don't believe me that how well these wines perform. So I went into the vineyard and I took a photo just as evidence of how happy these Cabernet and Merlot and Cab Franc vines are in the Hermanus region. So it's difficult to tell from this photo, but if you walk up a little bit closer to the bunches, you can actually see just how happy they are and how they're loving it out here in the sun next to the ocean. So that's a true story. You can take my word for that. That's what our Cabernet and our Bordeaux red grape bunches look like on Benguela Cove. Coming back to the winery and this wine, let us know your thoughts. So by the way, I'm almost finished, and then we can go into the Q&A. I'm very keen to get your comments on this. But when it comes to this wine, basically what we do is a 7-step selection process. So we first identify which vines we want, vineyard blocks we want to bring into the winery for this blend. So it's a selection of vineyards. We've got a bit of a track record or a history now of which vineyard blocks produces the best quality. So those get selected to come to our own winery. We only handpick these vineyards. So the second selection already happens in the vineyard. We don't pick all the bunches. We only select and pick those bunches that are perfect to what we set out to achieve. On the winery, so all those selected bunches that we took from the vine comes to the winery in small little lug boxes. We tip them onto this vibrating tables, which just turns the bunches around as it transports them forward. And they get inspected again, just so that we're 100% happy that there's no sunburn or green berries or damaged berries or whatever we're not happy with comes out. So it's a bunch inspection, followed by one more sorting process, which is a berry sorting. So you can imagine millions of berries crossing this table, and we've got 4 people on each side of the table just inspecting all the little berries to make sure that every single berry that goes into the fermentation is sound and of a quality that we're looking to achieve. Extremely labor-intensive process. It's an extremely slow process. So we go about, if you put it in bottles, what would that be, about 500 bottles in an hour that goes through this process. But that's what it takes when you set out to achieve high-end wine, quality wines. You need to pull out all the stops, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here at Benguela Cove. Okay, so once in the winery, so I've told you about all the soil types, the slopes, the clones, everything, all the components we have to work with. Let's take one parcel of Cabernet Sauvignon. Once it comes to the winery, we can still now decide, okay, but in which fermenter do we want to put it in? So we've equipped the winery back in 2016 with all sorts of new and cutting edge technology. So we don't just have one vessel, one size, one shape. I've went around the world, spoke to many winemakers looking for opinion and ideas of what is the best fermentation vessels. Is it from oak? Is it from stainless steel? Is it from concrete? Is it, does it open towards the top, or does it close towards the top? And I got lots of opinions, lots of ideas, but then at the end, when you look around in the winery, you'll see, but there's only this one type of vessel. So how do they know? They've got nothing to compare against. So when we've installed our fermenters, we've decided, okay, let's do something on behalf of the wine industry and on behalf of many winemakers, and install different shapes and sizes of vessels. So we'll typically take one parcel of grapes and put it into all 4 the different vessels we have, just to see as if there's not enough variables in the soils and the slopes, what is the impact of the vessel on the wine and the wine style that we get at the end of the day. So again, so many vineyards, so many blocks, then we bring it into the cellar and you can multiply everything by 4 because we put everything into different vessels as well, giving us different wines again to deal with. So once it's in the vessels, there's still the option, how do you want to extract the color, the tannin and the richness out of the grapes? Because remember, the juice in the inside of the berry is white juice. The color only comes from the skin, the outer part of the berry, and you need to get the juice to almost leach out that color and tannin. It's like leaching out the flavor out of a tea bag. So there's ways of doing it. The one is taking juice from the bottom and pumping it over the skins. And as you transfer the juice over the skins, it extracts all the color and tannin. The other way is using these punch down arms, which you just keep on submerging the skins back into the juice. And by doing that, you also extract color and tannin. 2 different ways of doing it ends up having 2 completely different wines again. So there's another variable for you. So we play around with all these things. We are Unnicknamed the test tube winery just because we play around and experiment constantly with all these different variables. But I think it's important not only for us to learn how to best go about our property and our vineyard blocks, but also to share those knowledge with everybody out there, because it's not a lot of wineries that have the capacity to experiment and trial all these different techniques. All those wines, all those components are vinified separately, aged separately in separate barrel lots. So when it comes to blending and assembling them all back together again, as I said, we might end up having 50 or 60 samples or components on the table. So how you go about blending is just to taste all those individual components, all the Cabernets, all the Merlots, smell them, taste them, make notes. What is unique about them? What is special about them? And keeping in mind what each of their strengths is and how you can best use them all together. So how can they best complement each other? As I mentioned before, the one might have tannin, the other one might have nice fruit, or like Michelle also mentioned, herbaceousness or spiciness or acidity. And you need to keep in mind how you're going to bring them all together, but also stylistically, what is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you dream of as a style and as a quality? And how are you going to get there with these 50-something components? So it's not a quick process. As I said, for us, it's the process of 3-4 weeks of tasting, evaluating, going back to the drawing board, trying out new things. Again, this specific wine, Michelle might correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I could remember, this took 16 blends to get to what you have in the bottle. So it like anything that's worthwhile, it takes time. And as I've mentioned, it's about striking the balance and striking the style and the quality you've got in mind. So important, yes, to understand how all these factors, tannins and acidity and alcohol, how they all work together. So the science behind it is really important, but a big part of wine and wine making, and even more so with blending, is the artistic side of it. If I give 10 of you the same components, let's say the same 5 components, the same 5 wines, not one of us are going to end up having the same end result or the same blend, just because we all smell different, we taste different, we have different ideas of what we like and how we see quality. So it's like every wine, every blend has got your unique fingerprint on it. So it's halfway science, halfway art, and in the middle is where the 2 meets, is your wine or your blend. So I'm back with the first slide I started with. Blending, it's quite a process, but it's a very fun process, and it takes you on quite a journey and a discovery. And eventually, when it all comes together, hopefully it's something really special and something you can enjoy. And I hope that all of that makes you look at blends a little bit different, and that you appreciate them more going forward. You know, blends is a bit of a, not a dying category, but it used to be a much bigger, more prominent category years ago. These days, with all the big brands and what they push, is more single varietals. So people tend to buy more, to default to Cabernet or Merlot or Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc. But I want to ask you and urge you to go next time when you go into shop, when we're allowed to go into shops to buy wine, to look at the blends and to play around with them. There's so many blends, so many styles and versions, and the guys do have really creative ways of going about blends. So I hope it sparked a little something in you today to try out blends next time around. Annie, Michelle, how are you guys doing that side? Are you ready for us? I'm really
Yeah,
curious to see what's cooking.
so yeah, we've just finished the stew. So everything's nice and soft, and it's been absorbing all those flavors. So the reason why we paired the tomato or Waterblommetjie Bredie with the Collage is, okay, so yeah, I don't know if you've seen the recipe, but those of you who haven't, I've added a couple of extra ingredients in there, which is roasted tomatoes. And the reason why we're adding the roasted tomatoes instead of just normal canned tomatoes or fresh tomatoes is actually roasting it. That heat just caramelizes all those sugars that is in it. And that just gives the Merlot, as Michelle mentioned, just that extra little stepping stone, just to shine through a little bit as well. So that sugars and everything kind of resembles that. And then when we're finishing the dish off, you'll see we're going to add some chopped parsley, a little bit of fresh basil, and that herbaceous floral notes just kind of shines, or helps the Cab Franc to shine through. So we kind of thought about all these different little wines and tried to make a dish that kind of brings all of them together, exactly blending all those flavors together as the wine blends it all together. And then it kind of just, I don't know, it works perfectly for some reason. So yeah, well, luckily, yes. So we've tasted it and everything. We're going to dish up very quickly. So you can kind of serve it with anything. A lot of people serve it with rice. A lot of people serve it with crème or pop. We don't have any of that at the moment, so we just kind of want to hit all these flavors shine and come through and pop up. You can always do mash, of course. So we're kind of suckers for mash. So it's going to dish up a nice little bowl over here. And then, as I said, we're going to finish it off with some nice, lovely, fresh parsley. And then just for that little bit of a hint of some creaminess, we're just going to finish it off with a nice little dollop of sour cream. And then that creaminess is also just going to help with the wine and give it, and just to cut through that fattiness of the lamb that you find in there as well. So Michelle, if you would, looks so hearty, perfect for the cold evening.
And is Waterblommetjies a South African thing, or do you get it in other parts of the world as well?
No, it is purely South African. Like I said, they only grow during July and August, and it's only in the Western Cape where you can find it. They do can some of it, and you can buy like canned Waterblommetjies. Yeah, it's not the same. It doesn't come close to the fresh ones.
Okay, so I take it there is no English word for Waterblommetjies then, is there?
No, not that I know of.
Okay.
Proudly South African.
There's a question, Annie, on obviously that looks delicious, and I can just see it going with the wine. But what else can one do with Waterblommetjies in terms of food?
What I normally do, what I like, instead of making a bredie, I normally like just giving them a quick blanch and then just dipping in them in some tempura batter and giving them a quick deep fry. So they go nice and crispy, and there's that little bit of hint of lemon and everything that comes through is beautiful. And then we did the Jordabi last week. So just that bit of Jordabi on the side, a little bit of hummus. You can do like a nice really lemony hummus or a lemony mayonnaise to dip that in with a glass of Jordabi, and it is fantastic.
Oh, that's something
yeah. Because I prefer deep frying them.
So we've got Shanae commenting English. It's Cape Pond weed. I'm not sure if Shanae is fooling with us, but there's English
Exactly.
for you.
I think
Let's see if there's
yeah, so
some more questions that I might have missed. So yeah, for everybody that's watching, this is on our website and social media pages. So there's some questions. Let me see. Which blends are the best? Oh, goodness, that's an unfair question. Because they're all so different, it purely depends on what you like stylistically. Even within the Bordeaux blend category, you can get like really light and elegant styles. You can get rich and big styles. But Bordeaux blends are more crunchy red fruit, where something like your Rhone blend or your Chateauneufs, the pups are more juicy, a bit more fragrant. So they're all different. And I guess that's the fun of exploring different blends. Is the one day you might feel like a Bordeaux, the other day you might feel like a Chianti style blend or a Rhone style blend. They're all so different from each other. So there's definitely not one that's superior to the rest. I think, and I'm being a bit risky in saying this, but the one with the most prestige and that's been around the longest and fetches the best prices would be the Bordeaux style blends. Okay, so let's see what else do we got. What is a field blend? That's an interesting question. Thanks for asking that. A field blend is what they've got, and it's quite common in the older parts of Europe, where they're not allowed to pull out an entire vineyard and replant all of it in 1 year like we've got in the New World or Southern Hemisphere. They regulated that you can only replant 5 or 10% of a vineyard. The remaining 90% has to stay. So you've got your vineyard with vines all over, got a couple of dead ones or struggling ones in between, and you replant all those dead spots, let's say 10%. Next year, you replant another 10%. But back then, they didn't have the technology and the labs that we have. So they just took whatever vines they had and just stick it into the vineyard. So what happened is over years, they ended up with a vineyard with maybe 8 or 10 or 15 different grape cultivars in one block. They didn't know it. They couldn't go and taste all those different vines separately to establish when they are ripe or when they are ready or when they're at their best. So what they do is they just pick everything in one go. So where we pick all our cultivars separately, make the wines, mature them, and then blend them at the end with a field blend. You blend it out there in the field already by just picking all the grapes together, bring them to the cellar in one go, vinify them, age them all together in one go. It's not done that common these days anymore, but there's some really nice and interesting examples of field blends out there. So yeah, if you see one, yeah, try it. Some of them are really nice. Okay, we've visited a few wineries in Hermanus, but can't remember seeing a lot of Bordeaux blends being made. So yes, you're quite right. As I mentioned before, we're just on the outskirts of Hermanus, and whilst the majority of the wineries would sit up in the Jemel and Ader Valley, we're just outside of that, and what we've got on Benguela Cove is something completely different climatically than what you've got in the Jemel and Ader. So with that climate, then those producers focus more on the likes of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Just where we down at the ocean's edge, we also get to do a few other things as well, just because our climate is a little bit different. As I explained, the temperature fluctuation that we enjoy down here, we're up in the valley, it's more moderate and constant temperatures that they have. Okay, let's see, what else do I have? What is a Rhone style blend? So Rhone style blend is like with the Bordeaux blends, focusing on the grapes that originally was grown in the Bordeaux region. Rhone is on the opposite side of France, a little bit more down south, much warmer conditions as well. And grapes varietal that are really well suited to those conditions are the likes of Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, Carignan, Cinsault. Um, More red fruit like boiled sweet characters, lower tannin levels, more voluptuous, sweeter, juicier wines. Those are Rhone style blends. So again, when it comes to blending, there's no rules. As if you use two grape varietals or more, it qualifies as a blend. So some of those Rhone blends have up to 8 or more cultivars in them. Some of them only have 2. But if you use that grouping of grape cultivars, that is known as Rhone style blends. Please may I win some wine. We'll work on that, I promise. So talking of wines and winning some, so for those international viewers, you may or may not know that South Africa is under a alcohol ban, so we're not allowed to sell any of our product, which is heartbreaking. So there's this international movement across basically all of the world now where people are supporting this Buy South African Wine campaign just because we're not allowed to sell locally. So we really need your support and appreciate your support. It's fantastic seeing all these pictures and images and emails with people sending you of them stocking up on South African wines and supporting the South African wine industry. So thanks for that, and keep it coming. It really helps us a great deal. For my local friends, I don't know how long we have to stick in there still, but what you can do, if it helps, is we can take orders, and by taking orders, we put you right in front of the queue, and you get first priority the day that we're allowed to ship and distribute wines again. You get to take priority over the orders that only arrive a little bit later. So let's see one more question. Why do most blends cost cheaper? Okay, okay. So the question is, there's a lot on the cheaper side of things. There's a lot of blends, and quite right. So it's interesting that blends, if you take South African rand, it would sit either right down at the bottom or at the top. There's hardly anything in between. So and that kind of helps you when you're buying, because something like, let's say, Cabernet Sauvignon, you get all the way at the bottom, you get entry level, medium, high, ultra premium price points. So you're always a little bit confused as to what you're buying. With blends, it's almost like this gap in the middle. Obviously you get some, but most are sitting at the top or at the bottom. So the ones at the bottom are not those that are necessarily more complex or layered. Those are just taking wines and blending them together for the sake of having a blend, where the ones at the top, as I explained, those are the guys that are taking it serious and wants to produce and come up with something that's really better. And more often than not, those blends are the best that a winery's got to offer. So yes, you do get them on both sides of the price bracket, but it's kind of easy just to go by price to distinguish between the two of them. The lower down one is not gonna necessarily blow the lights out. Okay, so next week, same time, same place, we're doing Sauvignon Blanc. So a lot of people say, oh, I know Sauvignon Blanc, it's boring wine, lots of Sauvignon Blanc out there. Well, as you could tell from our location and what we do, our Sauvignon Blanc is not your ordinary Sauvignon. This one that we're looking at, we produce a whole lot. We produce 5 Sauvignon Blancs at Benguela Cove. The one we'll be looking at is our estate Sauvignon. And it's a Sauvignon that comes with a bit of a twist, actually more than just a twist. It's got a few twists in it, so really interesting wine to look at and to taste, especially if you want to discover something unique or the other side of Sauvignon that you might be used to. A really fun wine, and I'm going to tell you all about it and what we've done and how we go about it, and hopefully you enjoy it, and it opens your eyes to a different style of Sauvignon. So please join us next week, same place, same time, and hope you've enjoyed this and enjoy the collage. All the best. Goodbye.